here this morning and to share some of the information we've been sharing for over 20 years. My wife and I have been presenting this, and some of you may have seen it, and by the grace of God, I hope there are witnesses here who can say, we have seen this, we have applied, it has made great wonders for us.
My husband and I, we have been married for 34 years. We have 2 grown children, a daughter and a son who are also married. So it's just the 2 of us now.
So what we are going to be talking about today is we'll start with the basic principles of personal financial management. These are critical for us to understand why we have what we have and where it comes from. And then we'll talk about issues of realities today, going into the debt crucibles, the jargons we get of marketing that takes us into debt. And of course, we'll talk about issues of budgeting, and we will look into how to get out of debt. And then we'll look into principles of borrowing. I hope we'll have enough time to look also into train up your child. If we have more time, then we can look into estate planning.
And what is really important before you can get into this discussion is to take up your position. You know, in 1 John chapter 2, we are reminded that we are not of the world. And the reality of the matter is, depending on which side you are, your measure of success and progress will be determined by that. So if you are on the side of God, He has His own measure of success, He has His own measure of progress.
Now let's get straight into the basic principles of personal financial management. They also correlate with those of stewardship. The first one, it says, God is the owner of everything. And then when we look at, Genesis 1, verse 1, that's when God calls all those let there be's. And you will remember that there was no Adam when God said, let there be. So you and I were not there. We cannot claim to have any creative powers. Everything we have belongs to God. 24 verse 1, lefatshe lohle le makokokoko a lona ke la morena. Re a kwana ba heso. So that's the first basic principle of stewardship. The second one is this: our purpose in life is to glorify God. We have been created for Him, by Him. Everything we have, who we are, we have to do everything to glorify His name. When you look at the text, Colossians 1 verse 16, it says, all the powers, authorities were created by Him and for Him. Then the next one, my wife will take it. It says, the tithe is the minimum testimony of our Christian commitment.
Yes. If you do not believe in tithe, you don't believe in God being the creator and the owner. So this is not about money. Tithe simply says, I do acknowledge that you are the creator and you own everything. And because I am just a steward, I will return to you. And the other thing that becomes important, and we will talk a little bit about stewardship because this is part of it, is that if you look at what God has given, principle number 1, you seed first. Because in seeding is, can you be trusted with more? So tithe is simply your way of saying, yes, you are the owner, and I am ready to be trusted with money.
So you need to understand that God still owns everything. He never lost anything He has created, except you and I, when we fell into sin. So God is not coming to us asking for money. When He says bring, He is commanding. And all He expects from us is to be obedient. And the next one, debt is bad.
Yes. Debt is bad. Debt was never for you and for me. Because if you truly think about it, if we are adopted in the family of God, and if we are co-heirs together with Jesus, what does it mean? It means that what God has is for us. So there need not be rushed to have something today which you can wait for tomorrow. We serve a God who knows each one of us. He knows the time, he knows what we need. And as a result, he never wanted us to be a slave to anyone. Because if you read Proverbs 22 verse 7, it simply says, the borrower is the slave to the lender. You know, the many things we have, cars we drive, homes, we do not own them. And we need to start using the right word. If you are bonded, if you are financed, the bank owns. But God never wanted us to be in that position. This is what is happening in this world. And for us as black people in particular, I want to say to you, before 1994, debt was not freely available. Debt is one area of slavery where people who come in what they call the New South Africa, they are falling in.
The most unfortunate part is that those who are deep in debts, when it comes to the third principle here, it comes last because they have to satisfy their creditors first. That is the problem. The next one and the last one says, prosperity is having what you need when you need it.
If you look at the life of Jesus and the disciples, there is no way you ever hear them accumulating and carrying things. They knew that God, who promised to supply all their needs, will supply them when they needed them. But somehow, we believe we should accumulate. And the truth is, if we sincerely ask ourselves to say, why do we believe in that way? At the bottom of it, we just don't trust God that he will come through when we need him to.
Let's move on. Now, if we look at financial factors, you know, here we took some from Edward G. Reed. We find that most of family breakups, it is not because of matswale. It is not because of squeezer. It is mainly because of financial issues. Those are the ones that contribute to family breakups. 40% of families overspend. 40 spend thousands on interest. These are people who are in debt. And you will later see that it's not only 40%, it goes as far as 70%. What does that mean? You earn 10,000 rand, 7,000 rand goes to debts. So you are only left with 3,000 rand. So that's what it means. The major culprit on finances is not that people do not have money. It is rather how we manage it. That which God has given us. That is the problem we have. Very few families have a family budget. Or even if some have, it is known by one spouse, not the other. So the other one is sort of excluded or is not even aware of the other's budget. And you find that one day we come across this couple. The husband has got a 30,000 rand overdraft. And he is accused by the wife that, why so much? Only to find that the wife has 70,000 overdraft. They never knew that each one was being so much deep in debts. So let us watch that.
And to demonstrate that it's not about how much money you earn. You know, in 1989, the lady who helped bring up our children, when she came to us, you know, we told her two things. We said, in this home, we don't buy things on debt. Secondly, we save. And we asked her, how much are you going to save every month? And she said 200 rands. And we took an endowment policy for her. After 5 years, she got about 18,000. And I said to her, do you see the people around here? Some of them are teachers, some are nurses, but none of them has had the money you have as a domestic worker. Then she decided then she was going to put in 400. She got about 39,000 and something, and that has been her way of life as a domestic worker. So it is not about how much you have. It is what you do, how you manage it.
Now let's look at biblical focus. Scripture refers about over 1,600 times about issues of money and possessions. The parables of Jesus Christ, 2/3 of them refer to issues of money and possessions. That should tell you something, that these things of money and possessions are critical to our lives. They will either determine whether we see heaven or we don't, the way we manage them. So that is very important. Here we know Jesus himself said this way, for what shall it profit you, man, if you just have the whole world to yourselves and lose your own soul? So it is important that the things that God has given us, God has lent us, we should not worship them, but the giver is greater than the gift. That is what is very important.
If we go to the next slide, the observations for today, the truth is, when you manage your finances, inflation is never a problem for you. As a matter of fact, I find that people who have money, they always pay less than those who do not have money. Because when things are on sale, they can actually buy, and maybe even buy on bulk. So don't be one who is found on that side, because remember, as a steward, how you spend God's money is very critical. So if you spend it on interest, it goes in the bin. If you are going to be the one who is financing the rich, that cannot be good stewardship. So fuel is going up, things are going up, VAT is going up, and everything else. So if you are living on the edge, many of us, because we fear our creditors more than God, I can tell you it's going to be God. The second thing is that we have been called to go ye therefore, and also to be the light and to be the salt. There are so many people that God has placed in our sphere so that when they have needs, we can help. But we are never able to help because we can't even help ourselves. So the truth is we have to partner with God and unburden ourselves so that when he says go there, you are ready to go.
Now, if you look here at the statistics, this is just to share with you that in 2011, 47% were in arrears of the 18.6 million people who are in debt. Almost half of those who are in debt were in arrears. The situation has not changed. It has worsened. 7,000 were applying for debt reviews. These are the people who say, we cannot handle it anymore. Come and help us. And now, this is no good, brothers and sisters. You see that? 75% of household income services debt. Not 40%. It's now 75. You earn 10, 7.5 goes to debts. Modern trends. This is what's happening.
There are many of us here who are in houses that are bonded for 20, 30 years, when you don't even know if you have a job next day. We are living at times where people are being retrenched, companies are closing. So suddenly, because we did not follow God's guidance, we are actually finding ourselves in trouble. The Bible has guidelines, even in terms of saying, if you have to borrow, how long? If you read the Bible, you can even see that there used to be prisons for people who owed. That's how serious debt is. And it is never for us. So the truth is that many people who are in debt, it's a lifestyle. They have credit cards, they have cards for this and this. If you have a credit card that you are using it to extend your income, you are living a lie. Because if you are earning 10,000 and you are spending 20,000, you are an impressionist.
Now, here are just a few facts that will share with you the challenges that are facing South Africa. The economy is not as good as it should be. Although we have the Ramaphoria effect, things are promising, but things have not changed yet. Just to share with you, in 1995, the gold miners were 380,000. Today, they are less than 116,000. The platinum were 200,000 in 2008. Today, they are less than 170,000. Just this week, we heard about these retrenchments that are looming. About 17,300 miners are likely to lose their jobs. This came on the 24th of this month. That is 2 days ago. This is what we are facing now. The municipal rates, remember, they are going to go up in July. The political climate, we know, is not the best. Although we have hope, things are not ready for us to fly. We need to grow the economy, and it is not growing as we expect it to.
And if you look at us, you know, a lot of white people at the time, they started investing even in things like properties. Property prices were so low. So their properties appreciated in a real sense. Many of us, we come into the market at a time where the prices are at the top. So whilst you are thinking you are investing and paying interest on top of whatever, the properties are not appreciating. So it becomes very important. The second thing is that many of us were trained here to go and find a job. As you have already heard, jobs are getting fewer and fewer, and the question is, what are you preparing your children for? Because at the end of the day, they are not going to be in a position where they are going to be financially free if they are looking for a job, if they are going to have those long bonds, if they are going to have those credit cards, if they are going to drive those cars that they have to buy on credit.
Actually, the statistics are scary. Just look here. Inflation has gone down, but petrol price is going up. Interest rates have come down, 25 basis points, but VAT has gone up. And when VAT goes up, almost everything goes up. Now, 6 million still unemployed in 2018 first quarter. That is 26.7 unemployment rate. Now, if we expand that, it's 36.7, including those 2.8 million who have just given up. These ones have looked and they are no longer looking. They are discouraged. That number is 2.8. Now let me tell you about the youth that does not appear there. Youth of 15 to 24 years, the unemployment rate of that is 65%. We have children who are coming out of our schools and tertiary education, qualified and no jobs. That is why they are introducing the youth employment, whatever you call it. So that is what it's trying to do to address that. But the economists say we will need about growth of between 6 and 8% for 10 years to be able to address the unemployment we are facing today.
Now, if you look at the debt crucibles, number one, we said debt is slavery. You know, Christ has come to set us free, isn't it? And the Bible tells me that if you and me are to be in debt, is that of loving one another. And hence why we can be able to meet the needs of other people being his hand. The other thing, if you look at even the Quran, it says debt is humiliation by day and is worry by night. And the truth is, debt is self-inflicted tragedy. It's no one who has put it on you. It is us wanting more than we can afford. Ellen G. White says, you know, during her time, he says, avoid it as if you are avoiding smallpox. I don't know what you'll say, but she was basically saying, don't ever get there. But how we get there as Christians, when we are supposed to be separate to the world, when the world has to learn from us in this, I do not know.
Now the problem is when you are in debt, your relationship not only with your spouse, but with your employer become strained. You know, you get home, your wife wants to ask about something money related. You just say, always you think money. You become irritable. That's what debts do. Because there's an envelope that comes from your creditor, there's an SMS that wants you to honor your credits. And these are irritable. Now let's look at the next one. When it's crunch time, what are you supposed to do? You know, some people are afraid to take the bold step and do what is right.
If you look at us here, you know, some of us, we are paying DSTV subscriptions. And the truth is, many of us who are working right now, if you look at what that TV has become the main teacher in your home, and you are paying for it. In fact, I would want to challenge you that go home tonight and just work out who are teachers in your home who teach your children. You may find that you only have 10%, and church maybe has 1%, but the rest of it is that DSTV that you are funding. The other thing is, look at your medical aid. You know, when you, depending on your age, you need to look at the one that is relevant for you rather than you paying for something that you shouldn't. You know, like us right now, because we don't have children, we don't get pregnant and whatever, we are kind of insured for hospital mainly. And the other thing, because standard medical aids, they just don't cover us, we are self-insured. But because the money we were supposed to pay there, we are putting it in our self-insurance. Groceries, for instance, I mean, you know, groceries, we have become experts in this space. In other words, we never buy grocery when it's not on special. Literally speaking, we buy when it's on special and we'll buy in bulk. So if I have to supply needs for the church, whether it be for soup kitchen and whatever, I don't feel the pinch because I just go where I have stocked it up. Clothing, we have a philosophy. We don't buy stuff that are not on sale, period. So, you know, because we are looking for clothes to wear. And we brought up our children just that way. Our children never wore name brands. Not at all. Because we believe that you can still have good and quality things without that. Insurance policies. There are policies that are useless. You go, you know, when you are a slave, you become a slave all over. You go and buy a car, or you have credit, they say take this insurance extra in case you die so that it can pay for it. And the truth is that if you are thinking that way for your family, if you have a life policy, it is better because they will pay out the amount. If you are owing 1,000 or you are owing 5,000, you can still have money. So we need to be aware and be educated.
Now let's look at some of the observations that Ellen White is warning us against. Christians seek to build as worldlings build, and to dress as worldlings dress, to imitate the custom and practices of those who worship only the God of this world. That's who we are today. Now, many poor families, Ellen White says, are poor because they spend money as soon as they receive it. Lack of budgeting of family budget causes impulse buying. Now listen to this one. These are the people who go and ask for advances from their masters. Ellen White says, the spirit of prophecy says, you must see that one should not manage his affairs in a way that will incur debt. When one becomes involved in debt, he is in one of Satan's nets, which he sets for the souls. Abstracting and using money for any purpose before it is earned is a snare.
You know, and this is serious. You know, every single one of us who was baptized or is baptized in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, we said we believe in the spirit of prophecy. We said we believe in the Bible. And the reality, the reason they say it's a snare, it doesn't look like it. Until such time that at the end of the day, you thought I was in when you are really out.
Now, here we just want to share with you signs of debt problems. Here are just some of them. You know, people are paying just the minimum. You know, there's this credit card that comes, just pay only 10%, and you pay 10%. Then you are in trouble, because what about the rest? And you are going to take more the next month. You know, irritable when spouse asks about savings. You know, you use one credit card to pay off another credit card. You know, when somebody is sick, he says, you know what, I'm not really, it's not bad, you know, my body will be able to deal with this. God created me naturally that I should be able, you know, to heal myself. Why should I go to the doctor? He's broke. He doesn't have money to go to the doctor. You know, those are the things. Just sharing with you some of the signs there. How long should we service debt?
Biblically, if you look at Deuteronomy 15 verse 1, it shouldn't be more than 7 years. That is why at the end of every 7 years, whoever was still owed money, who lended somebody for more than that, it had to be written off.
But if you think Standard Bank is going to write off your debt in 7 years, dream on. Dream on.
And this is something that is very interesting. You know, we landed in 1994 when I was asked, because I worked for the bank at the time, to come and facilitate a financial management workshop. And as we started to learn, investigate from the Bible, and we came to that, we had already signed up for a 20-year bond. We had to kneel down and we said, Lord, we did not know. But as you are going to bless us, that's one thing we are going to come out. And we paid off in 4 years. Because if you look at some of the cars you drive, you pay them off in 5, 6 years, and they are worth more or less the same as the house. The question is, why are you taking the house longer? The businesses are in the business of making money out of interest. That's why they will not tell you. I meet people who work for the bank who also don't even know.
So if you take a bond of 30 years, you will see later on in our demonstrations that you buy your house 3 times. Well, there is some jargon you will get. Somebody wants to give you a cell phone when you have one. And when you say, I have one, he says, no, this is a better package. I don't know whether it talks better or what it does. But the fact is, it's a cell phone. You have this thing that, you know, take this car, the first installment's in 6 months or 3 months' time. And you say, hey, I can take that BMW and I don't have to worry about payments now. But in 3 months' time, it's crunch time. You start paying. You know, this is the jargon we get all the time. People go and buy cars on balloon. Balloon is residual value. And I don't want to offend anyone. But if you do that, you should know you live above your means. You are driving a car you cannot afford. And now the financial institutions have realized that let us accommodate them. Let us give them and put them into debt. And that's what they are doing. They say, you can afford it. We'll make it easy for you. And all they do, they are putting you into debt. Now, I just want you to check some of these things. The call centers that keep on calling you for all sorts of things. Here was an advert. It says, the best-selling BMW series of all times can be yours with up to prime -7 and 0 deposit. That's an advert I took from the paper. That's how they entice you. And you say, why not? Brothers and sisters, budgeting.
Budgeting. The reason we are here is because we got the message of the gospel that told us about eternal life. So we looked at the destination, isn't it? So how come we live our everyday life recklessly without thinking the end in mind? So statistics says only 3% of families do budget. So that is the one thing to saying, how do you spend money that you have never budgeted? That is why when you get an advert or somebody knocks Siatengisa, you are on it. Now, if you look at the budget and you say, what is the purpose of it? It gives you direction for your family goals. In other words, it's one of those, money is one of those resources that we are using to achieve our family goals. That's why you need to be able to budget. It helps you make informed decisions because you don't spend what you have. It tells you when you can do what and whatever. And it also brings professionalism in the individuals. We serve a God of order. And therefore, that order has to permeate in everything that you do. And the other thing is that when you are married, the Bible says the two will become one. But it's amazing how many people we see who are one in everything else but not their purse. And therefore, one has his own budget and the other. So when you are a couple, when you are a family, one of the things that demonstrate if you have really gotten to where you can call yourself a couple or family is when you have a joint budget. Because now you are ready to share in what this world calls power.
Things have been happening. Once upon a time, a sheriff arrived at the house. And he said, I have come to repossess the house. And the wife said, you came to the wrong address. My husband pays, and we are never behind. And the sheriff said, is this 6565? And she said, yes. And she turned around and looked at the hubby, and the hubby was looking down. They never shared their budgets. The other never knew what the other was doing. Always she was given the impression that everything was in order until the sheriff arrived. And sometimes he used to leave every morning as if he was going to work, and yet he was fired 3 months ago. And these are some of the things that happen. Let's look into these things. They are critical. Now, this is a sample budget you can look into. The first thing there is that tithes and offerings first. God comes first. And after you have done everything, and please don't tell me that there are deductions. We pay tithe on gross. God never deducts anything before he blesses us. If you want to argue with me, that one, see me lunchtime. We pay tithe on gross. And here is it. These are guidelines. You see, if you have a car, it should be around 17 or 20% when you budget for the car from your salary. The house is around 35 to 40%, because otherwise, if you don't do that, and you find that the car is higher, like 30%, it's like now, udula mola mukukung or bedroom mara opakile BMW. It doesn't make sense. So you need to have your priorities right. These are guidelines, and one which is very critical that you need to remember is the black tax. We all have black tax. We have extended families. We are black people. We are uncles and aunties. And they know, and some of us, we play big as if we have deep pockets. And they keep on coming and asking, and we wonder why. And that's the impression we have given them. But we have extended families. They look up to us sometimes for assistance, for support. So take care that you also budget for black tax. Because they are going to come, your cousins, your brothers, asking money from you. Now, these are just guidelines as to how. As you can see, everything is being taken care of here. But of most important is that savings for emergencies is very critical.
Now, Let's just go to this next slide and talking about, well, I'm just giving you information because I don't think you are in debt, but if you know people who have debt, this is the plan to eliminate your debts. Firstly, start preparing a family budget. You know, so many of us, if we have to work our money backward, we are going to find that there is at least 200 rands that we don't even know where it is at. So when we have our family budget, then we are starting to work. And it happens that even the things that we have been spending money on that are not necessary, you can actually start eliminating them. The other thing is start cutting back. I remember when our children were growing up, you know, it wasn't when the cell phones were so popular and whatever. We had a landline. We had to get detailed accounting of detailed billing, so that everybody who phones must pay for themselves. So even children, because most of the time is that we think our children are small and should not understand the family budget. In fact, many of us, we are in debt because of our children. But the minute they start seeing how it works, I remember at one time, you know, if we get time, we'll talk more about it around training the child, was that we put our children on money allowance from age 7, and I remember our son at the time, he got 20 rands only. So what we will do is that at the end of the month, we all sit round the table, we have money in cash, he gets his 20 rands, the other one gets, and then money there we put for the car, this is for the house, this is for groceries, so there is money all over. Then we distribute tithe envelopes to say, no, we start with God. God should not get change. 20 rands get 2 rands for tithe, 2 rands for offering. Then after we have done that, they ask, what is this money for? We say, that's for that and for that. So there is no more money. When they understand it, they cannot come back and ask for more.
Well, we'll come back to that in more detail. I hope we'll have time. Now, let's see how good works. Good says get out of debt. We are going to take you through a marathon of taking you out of debt. And you just have to check with me. If I'm too fast, you let me know. The first step you do, that's it. You declare a moratorium on additional debt. In other words, no more additional debt. I am not going home. That's the first step you do. The second one, you say, you make a commitment, a covenant. You say, Lord, now, I don't want to get into debts anymore. As you bless me, hakisa hopula washing machine, hakisa hopula that thing ya fryer or fridge or whatever, I'm going to use that 13th check, that bonus, for reducing the debts. Hakisa hopula denies time. That's what we do. And this is how you do it. You list all your debts from the smallest at the bottom to the biggest at the top. Once you have listed them, you start attacking the smallest ones. Because if you start with the bond, you'll be discouraged. You start with this one. This is an Edgar's one. It's a 6 months debt. You pay about 500 rands. And as my wife said, you got 500 rand somewhere after you cut there and there. Now you have another 500 rand. Now you take that 500 rand and the 500 rand you pay into this, or let's say it's grocery, let's say it's Woolworths. It's 500. Now you have 5 plus 5 is 1,000. Instead of paying it off in 6 months, if it was 6 months, you pay it in 3 months. It's closed. You have 1,000 rand you used to pay at here, Woolworths. You go to the next one, is Edgar's. Edgar's, you pay 1,000 rand for 6 months. Now, 1,000 rand, you've got another 1,000 rand you used to pay at the grocery store, Woolworths. Now you've got 2,000 rand. Now, instead of paying off Edgar's in 6 months, you are paying 2,000 rand You are going to pay it off in 3 months. Now, in 6 months, you have closed Woolworths. You have closed Edgar's. You go to your credit card. How much do you pay your credit card? 2,000 rand? Let's assume it's 2,000 rand. And it's for 12 months. 2,000 rand for 12 months. Now, you've got 1,000 rand from Woolworths, 1,000 rand from Edgar's. These are the ones you used to pay. Now you've got 2,000 rand plus the 2,000 rand you pay on your credit card. It becomes 4,000 rand. Now you were supposed to close this account in 12 months. Instead of paying 2, you are paying 4. So in 6 months, the credit card is gone. So in 1 year, you have done away with Woolworths, Edgar's, and your credit card. Now you've got your 2-year guarantee, Morkel's. Your 2-year guarantee store. How much do you pay for your furniture there? 2,000 or 3,000 or 4,000? It's 2 years. Okay, 2,000 rand. Is that okay? Okay, 2,000 rand. Now you can imagine you've just opened this account. They sold you the 2-year guarantee, and you bought this furniture. Now you are paying 2,000 rand there. Now you bring 1,000 rand from grocery store, Woolworths, 1,000 rand from Edgar's, 2,000 from the credit card. It's 4 plus the 2,000 rand you pay there. It's 6. It was 24 months. Now you pay 6,000 rand for 24 months. How many months are you going to close that debt? Instead of paying 2, you pay 6. Somebody says 6 months. Somebody says, calculations? 4 months. She says 4 months. Now let's say 6 months for argument's sake. Now in 1.5 years, you don't have Woolworths, Edgar's, credit card, and Morkel's gone. Now you've got a car there. How much do you pay for your car? It's 5 years. You've just bought it. It's 5 years. 5,000? 7,000. Right, 7,000 rand. Now you pay 7,000 rand to this car. But now, how much do you have now? You've got 1 from here, Woolworths, 1 from Edgar's, 2 from credit card is 4, plus 2 from, it's 6. 6 plus 7 is 13,000. Now, instead of paying 7, you pay 13. So, if it was 5, already it's not even going to be 2. It's going to be around that, okay?
And matters worse for a house. If you have a bond and you are paying 6,000 rand a month, probably 5,000 is interest. So you are only reducing your capital by 1,000. So that additional, when it does more for you, it immediately slashes out your repayment period.
Now let's look here. Let's say 2 years instead of 5. Now, you have 2 plus, you have 3.5 years. You have cleared everything until the car loan in 3.5 years. Because here it was 3 months, 6 months, it was 1 year. And then here we said 2. No, here is what? 6 months. And then it was 1.5. Now, 1.5 plus here, how much is it? Let's add all the months. 6 is 12. And then here we said it's 6. It's 1.5. It's 1.5 years. And here is 2 years. 1.5 years plus 2 years is 3.5 years. In 3.5 years, you don't owe anything from Woolworths, Edgar's, credit card, Morkel's, and your West Bank. Now you are left with the bond. How much do you pay for the bond? 8,000? 8,000? Now if it's 8,000, now in that 8,000, by the way, 6,000 is interest, and 2,000 is what? it reduces the capital, because that's how it starts, especially with newborns. Now, let's say for argument's sake, now you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 plus 7. It was 13, isn't it? Now, instead of here, 2,000 rand takes you 20 or 30 years. Now, if you pay 13 or 15, how much is it going to be? Instead, remember, 2,000 over time, over 30 years, although it's going to increase, it takes you to 30 years, 30-year bond. Now you have 15,000. It's going to be, maximum will be 4 years. Now, 4 years plus 3.5 years is 7.5. Now, in 7.5 to 8 years, you have cleared your accounts, cleared all of them. You don't owe anybody anything. Now everything you buy cash. You don't seem to believe. We are the witness. And some of you here maybe could testify to that. We have come across people who applied this. We've been talking about this thing for over 20 years. And there are people who have applied it, and they tell us that we are debt-free. It's doable. We are the witness in the first place, and there are many others. Let's move on. I'm going to be very quick now. Which one?
I think the message here is that if you are not managing your finances, you are reckless. Nobody wants to work for a company where it's very clear the leadership is not managing the finances, because you could be without a job. But there are so many of us who are putting our families in such a reckless position. Because if you are not managing your finances, tomorrow your child may not have money to even go to school. Matters worse, you don't even know if you are alive tomorrow. You know, when you die tomorrow, your children are really in trouble. So this is so serious. As you are thinking of the company you are working for and wanting to leave because they are not managing properly, think of your own family, because that's exactly what you are doing. Or don't have children if you are going to choose such a reckless life.
Now, if you are going to borrow, these are some borrowing principles. As little as possible, make payback term as short as possible. Sometimes go for a fixed rate. It will maybe more or even 2% more, but at least you know this is what you can afford. When interest rates go up, yours will remain the same, but that's up to you. Be sure that you don't take this personal surety. Personal surety. Solomon says you are a fool if you do that. Your cousin or your brother says, you know what, I can't afford this thing. They say, please, babatla guarantor. All they are saying, but when I have failure, you pay. And he's going to drive your car, and you paying for him, and you won't get it from him because it's in his name. Okay? Just be careful about that. Shop for the money also. Now, these are just some of the things we want to share with you. We are just mindful of time. We spoke about some of them. Debt is not the norm. It's not a way of life. So here is the point. Ecclesiastes 5 verse 5. The borrower has the absolute commitment to pay. Don't duck and dive. It is sin to borrow and not pay.
I think maybe we can move to the pages in the house.
Yeah.
You can just...
Let's just look at this, how to buy a house in 7 years, because some of us thought, no, it's not doable. Now, there are two people here, the biggest and the smalls. You may not see. The biggest they both want 100,000 rand house. Now, the biggest go straight for 100,000 house. They put 10,000 deposit, then 90,000 is left, and then for 30 years, they pay 925 per month. Now, the smalls say, we want to pay off our house in 7 years. They go for a 60,000 house, 10,000 deposit, 50,000 in 7 years. they pay 882. At the end of 7 years, they paid 74,000 rand or so, and they've paid it off. And now they go and look for that big house of the biggest. They say, we want it. And they go for it. And let's say things have not changed because their house, which is 60,000, could be 70. But let's say it's still 60. And the biggest is still 100. And they put 60,000 deposit of that house. Then they are left with 40,000 rand. That 40,000 rand bond, they take it in 7 years. And in 7 years, they will have paid only 59,000 rand. Now, in 14 years, they took 2 bonds. They will have paid the total of 133,000 rand for the house. They owe nobody nothing. They have the same house as the biggest, the smalls. And they still have 16 years to enjoy without paying nothing, whereas the biggest have 16 years to go and to pay for their bond. During that period, they save money. At the end of 30 years, the biggest own the house. They own nothing, but they have paid 33,000 for that house. Whereas the smalls paid 133, and they also have cash of over 615,000 in their pockets. They paid their homes in 7 years, twice. It's possible. Harle wuchi di chiwa di mo baaish. Kin need. Kam kholu khumuchenga no garlere nyama uchwa kaina. Right?
And maybe let's just rush quickly to savings, why it's important to save, especially for the young people, and to teach the children also to save. If you save just about 5,000 rand a year, as a young person, after 40 years, you are likely to end up with about 2.4 million. And I'm just saying 5,000 a year. Which is why I was saying the lady who helped bring up our children, we just taught her to saying, you can just make money and even better than those who call themselves professional. Because savings, as you save, you earn money on interest instead of paying it. Warren Buffett basically says, he has made money in life, firstly because of his American genes, but secondly, he said, compound interest. Those who don't understand it, they pay it. Those who understand it, they earn it. So saving gives you peace. You can do God's work. You can help, and when they retrench you at work, you basically are not in turmoil.
She had an aunt who wanted us to execute her will when she died. She was a nurse. We did not check the statements of her bank accounts before, when she was alive. Many years after she died, we looked at the bank statement. We found that it had 4.8 million. And when we checked for years what she was putting in, it was 480 rand per month for years.
So you can imagine children who have a parent like that,
who
is not reckless. When you die, you have thought of them and end in mind. Now, the other thing around training up the children is that, I shared a little bit to say we put our children on money allowance early. We always would have, in a year, we give an allowance for clothing, for winter and for summer, and we will drive them to the shopping mall. Let me tell you, when it's their money they have to spend, they come out with very cheap things. But if you go in there, we taught them like that. By the time the girl went to university, we thought, well, she has been managing money for so long, we gave money twice a year. We basically say you must start managing for 6 months and whatever. When they got married, we simply asked them the question, how much do you have for the wedding? And the first thing they said, we don't want to start with debt. Okay, if you don't want to start with debt, the girl, there were only 40 people at the wedding. The boy, well, he just had the ladies' side when they did the traditional thing, And we said, maybe when you have money and you just want to entertain and whatever one day, you can do so. And the reason is that from a very early age, we were trying to teach them, you can't look to us for things like that because we can disappoint you and die. So you have to actually learn and be responsible. So it can be done. The reason our church is struggling with finances is because we grow up and be adult and still be struggling with tithe and offering. So you can imagine if we start doing it properly and we take our sight on the position of God instead of the world's method, this church will be different.
What we owe our children.
So a few things around what we owe our children. We owe our children a Christian home environment. That God will hold you accountable for it. You also owe them a willingness to work and an appreciation for it. So there is no free money. When you start giving them the allowance, you link it with what they need to be doing. If it is not done, they are not getting it. If they lose a blazer at school, they are paying for it. If you go on holiday, they just want to do rides and ice cream and whatever, they do it for it. Money and work and earning, they are associated. So the truth is that many of us, I don't know why we do that, because the very key things that we should give to our children, we sometimes miss them for the things simply because the world is in us instead of us influencing the world.
Well, in closing, I just want to tell you that you own nothing. Everything you have belongs to God. The spirit of prophecy says, God has given us things, has put things in our hands, so that the use thereof will determine whether we are worthy of eternal things. God bless you.